Welcome to Beyond Limitations. My name is Barbara Daphne, your host for today. Today, I have a new and wonderful guest that I'm happy to share with you today. Her name is Christina Cadeau. She is a longtime friend who has graciously agreed to join me on my channel to speak about her journey of becoming a teacher. So Christina is a teacher here in New York City, and so I'm really gonna interview her about her process of becoming a teacher, her experience of being a teacher, and really any resources and advice that she has for anyone who aspires to become a teacher. So let's get started. So Christina, introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christina Cadeau, as Barbara stated prior. I am a special ed teacher. I work for the DOE. I teach 7th and 8th grade French and social studies. And I'm excited to tell you about this wonderful journey that I've been placed on.
Okay, nice. Thank you for joining me, by the way. I think this is going to be a great conversation.
I think so too.
Okay, so before we get started, we're going to do a little icebreaker. So I have a few questions for you. If you could describe yourself in 3 words, how would you describe yourself?
Caring.
Caring.
Humble. A daughter.
A daughter. That's an interesting way to describe yourself, as a daughter. Why?
I feel like a lot of my roles, a lot of things that I've had done in life catered around my parents, and yeah, I feel like, and I do play the daughter role well, I think.
Yeah, so, I mean, I actually think you're a great daughter, so yeah. I would agree. Okay, so if you could describe your journey in your career, your life and job, how would you describe it in 1 sentence?
Ooh.
Yeah.
In 1 sentence. Describing my career, basically life, huh?
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Or just your career. If you had to describe your journey of becoming a teacher, how would you describe it in 1 sentence?
Ooh, it's been a road. It's been a roller coaster, boy, I tell you. It's just been full of emotions, but definitely grateful for them as well.
Okay.
I would say.
Okay, so you would describe it as a roller coaster.
Definitely, yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So would that hint that it hasn't been like a straight path?
Definitely not a straight path.
Okay.
Definitely not.
Okay. And I'm
it
sure
has
that
ups and downs.
Yeah.
It's rocky moments, moments where it was just stagnant, just waiting, for that jump to go down, So it definitely has its ups and downs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think like anything in life, right? It's just like there's no straight path. I think a lot of times we think like things are just going to happen. We're gonna go from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And it's just like no, there's a lot of turns. Twists.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay, so that's a good one. That's a fair way to describe it. Okay, so I would not be here today if it wasn't for
God. I'm going to put it out there for the Lord Jesus. My goodness.
Amen. We thank God.
Oh yes.
Okay, so wonderful. Okay, so we'll get started now about your journey. So tell us, what do you do? What is your current career right now? I mean, we spoke about it a little bit when we started, but tell us, what do you do?
So I'm a special ed teacher, middle school. I teach 7th and 8th grade, French, social studies, and ELA.
Okay.
And then I support in math.
And math as well. Okay. And how long have you been a teacher?
It's been 2 years now since I've had my credentials, but I feel like I've always been a teacher. I've always worked with students, whether it was as a paraprofessional or whether it was as a sub teacher or a teacher's assistant. Okay. But so I can say 2 years, having my credentials
and stuff like that. Okay. And how has those 2 years been? How would you describe those 2 years?
It's been interesting. Okay. It's been a lot of growth. It has not been easy. Okay. But with God's blessing, every day you wake up, you do what you have to do. with a lot of prayer, a lot of support, I can say like, we're getting there.
Yeah.
But it truly has been pretty tough. And it's not to say like, it has been tough, like, with what I do, but sometimes mentally, you know what I mean? Sometimes you are placed in certain situations that mentally you're not prepared for.
Okay.
And so often we pray for things and then it's there.
Yeah.
And then it's like, now what do I do with it?
Yeah.
And so I think for me, every morning I wake up and it's like, I'm doing what I always pray for.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing the things that I used to cry and never thought that I would actually be, and that is being a teacher, so I think that truly keeps me going in the morning, and it keeps me humble, and it definitely keeps me in a space of gratitude.
Yeah. I think there are two things that came to mind. Well, first, I would like to discuss, okay, if you don't mind sharing, what are some of the challenges that you faced as a teacher? Like in those 2 years, what are some of the challenges that that you faced? And maybe like for anyone who's interested in becoming a teacher, that's just like, okay, maybe these are some things that I should expect to encounter.
Yeah.
Like obviously everyone's experience is different, but just if you could speak about one or two challenges that you encountered.
Of course, the first and foremost challenge I would say is admin.
Okay.
Because one thing I realized quickly is as a teacher, it's not truly about the teaching anymore. And so often that's why you see veteran teachers retiring, because it is not what teaching used to be about. Now it's a lot about the numbers, like how the child is performing, it's all about the numbers and the testing and the statistics, the data, and a teacher goes into that field because they have a passion. There's something in them that, they want to teach the future, and when you get in that classroom and they're telling you, this is not how you do it. People who've never been in the classroom, they come in for 5 minutes and then it's like, well, I got you. Like you weren't doing how you were supposed to do it. But like, you know your students, you're with them every day. Like, you're just in the office, like, in your little cubicle, and you're coming for 5 seconds and you're telling me how I should do my job, as if like I did not go to school or have any credentials to do my job. So that's really like, that's very challenging, because it's like, no matter how much experience you have, you always like, they're always going to come and test you. Like, like in your class, admin coming in your classroom, let me observe you. Like, no matter how long you've been doing it. I think that's one aspect. The next one is like, understanding once you are dealing with children, you are dealing with parents. And so often, like, especially in this generation now, we're dealing with a lot of behavioral issues, and which stops the teaching, because when you're in a classroom and you have to tell Johnny, stop, sit right there. Johnny, I'm talking. Like, it's no more teaching at that point. It's so much behavioral issues happening. And then you're calling the parents where you would have that support. And unfortunately, you do not have the support, where you have some parents who done checked out and they're like, why are you calling me? That's your job. My job is not to actually educate your child, like, mannerism wise, like, it's to actually teach them, like, having those foundations for them to actually transition going into high school and be prepared, for whatever career path they choose. But going into teaching, you do have to have the passion. If you do not have that passion and you think you're going in for the summers off and the weeks off here and there, honestly, it's not going to last. It's not going to last long. You need to have that passion. You need to have a love for children. You need to have a care, and you need to value education. And you need to truly have hope in the future. For these children.
Wow, there's so much to unpack in that answer that you gave, right? Because I feel like those issues, unfortunately, are not unique to you, right? I think some people might be like, well, it's because you are new, and so that's why you don't know how to manage admin, or you don't know how to manage the parents. But like you said, a lot of veteran teachers are deciding to give up and just like retire, because it's just like, no, like I came into this to, like you said, I'm passionate about this, I care about the children, I care about their future, but here's admin telling me about like the scores, right? And that's sad in a way, right? Because obviously it hinders you from actually making sure like this child is growing. And so I guess what one way to talk about it is, how do we see like admin, like the administration being so focused on like the numbers. And when we say numbers, we're talking about like test scores, right?
Especially state tests, like,
How does that impact the children, like directly in terms of them being able to learn and being able to develop and get like the necessary knowledge that they need to be prepared for like the next grade? Like,
but see, that's the problem. It's like, sometimes, the thing is, sometimes you have superintendent that comes in, So when I first started teaching, there was a new superintendent for our district, and his goal was math. Like, for the first year, it was all math. So children need to know all of their multiplication table, which I agree, right? But sometimes it's the pressure that comes with that, where it's like, as a special ed teacher, unfortunately, they're not going to see things how I see things, because education is not a one size fit all. And when you have a gen ed teacher or when you have administration, special ed students are always put in the back, including the teacher, and that's unfortunately what happens. And so now when the state exam, all students are put on that same standard. A child is, for example, is performing at a 4th grade level on their IEP, and IEP basically is the individual a plan, like, plan that you have for that student, their educational plan, and where it says, like, a background of that child. How does this child perform? What is the best ways for them to actually get certain lessons, and as a special ed, like, I'm writing those IEPs, and I'm like, all right, fine, the best way for such and such to perform well on that grade level is for him to do this. You need to have, like, manipulatives, but on the state exam, you don't have that, so now you're teaching that child, like, how do you fit? How do you do it? How do you go on? Because you're putting that child on that same standard level, when the document says that child does not perform on the 8th grade level, but the test is on the 8th grade level. So unfortunately, as a special ed teacher, like, the pressure is there, because that student, at the end of the day, I'm actually graded based on that child scores, like, on their performance.
And it's interesting because the pressure is there, but the resources are not there, right? Because like you said, it's not a one size fit all thing, particularly when you're dealing with students who are in special education. And I myself, I'm not a teacher, but I worked in schools, like, growing up, and right after college, maybe 2 years after college, I taught in an after school program, and I also observed some of the same challenges. And what's challenging is that the resources are not there for the teachers, which makes it a lot harder, because in a special education class, while there is 10 students, each of them have their own plan, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And there's no resources
for it,
and so for me going in, like, as a first year special ed teacher, it's like, oh my goodness, what do I do? Like, like, how do I help this kid? Like, how do I do this? But, I was very grateful and very fortunate, like, to have truly a bunch of students that I was truly be able to be transparent with them, and learn, and tell them, hey, this is my first year teaching. And they understood it, and there was a mutual respect that we had for one another, and I truly enjoyed my first year. In comparison to my second year, I'll tell you that. I truly enjoyed my first year of teaching.
What was the difference between the two? Why did you
think first year of teaching, I was learning, and I was accepted that, I accepted that, all right, fine, this is a new place, I'm learning. Like, it was new school, I was learning with the students. This year, I can say I'm putting that pressure on myself, where it's like, I know now. So what do I do with my resources that I have? And also the group that I am working with this year, it's much challenging, I would say. And so, like, I have to be on my P's and Q's in a sense. And not to say that I was not on my P's and Q's, but this year I have to make sure that, I'm using really different resources for every student.
How do you get support from the parents when a lot of parents are, like you're saying, feel as if like it is your job to not only teach my child, but it is your job to also discipline my child. It is your job to how do you get those parents on board? How do you communicate with them? Like, here, I'm on your side, I am on your team, but we can only do this if we all work together, right? Like, how do you communicate that with the teachers?
With the parents.
With the parents, sorry,
yes. Well, it's understanding.
Okay.
It's just really calling them, and I think every parent wants to hear, that. I would say every parent wants to hear that, like, you do have a teacher who cares for your child, because you do have teachers who just don't care, and I'll tell you that you have teachers who just do not care, and sometimes they are just checked out. It's not to say that they don't care, and I understand it. Some teachers are just checked out, where it's like, what? They're hopeless in a sense, because they have no support from parents, they have no support from administration, they have no support, like, within the classroom, and so I can understand it, where it's like, I'm doing the best that I can, but it's very important to have that relationship with the parents.
Okay.
Very, very important. You have to go in from the very beginning and understand, like, when you have those teacher-parent conferences where you talk to the parents, and you tell them, these are my, like, expectations. Do you have any expectation for your child? You know what I mean? Let's have that clear understanding that we both have, like, let's see where what we value, and from there we're able to talk. And once the child sees that you have a very close relationship with the parent, trust and believe they're going to cooperate in that class.
Yes.
Because I did have one student of mine, and call mom right away. And mom was on speed dial. And no matter how much she tried to push my little buttons, I'd be like, girl, stop. I'm calling your parent. She's like, all right, Miss Cadeau, like, stop.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So you do have to have that connection, like, to build that relationship with the parents. Some parents just don't want to have a relationship with you either. Some parents truly do not care either.
Which is unfortunate.
Yes, I've had parents where I would call and they're like, why are you calling me? Like, that child is staying with their father. Just call the father, don't call me.
Right now.
So you've had parents like that as well.
That I haven't. Do you find that there's a certain population of parents that tend to not care more than, do you find like it's older parents, do you find like it's younger parents, or do you find that there are other contributing factors that makes it seem like they're so disconnected from their child's educational development? Like, is it that, like, because there are some parents who just, they work long hours, and it's just like, in the environment in which we're teaching it, because you're in Brooklyn, New York, there's a lot of immigrant parents, a lot of single parents. Are there other contributing factors where it's just like, it's not that they don't care, it's just like life.
There you go. Yes,
be lifing.
That's right. There's also that as well. Where especially in our community, I would say, parents are single parents and they're working 2-3 jobs. I have a student like that in my class. There are definitely many factors that contributes to, like, some parents, like, just not being available, just not having it, and also a lack of resources, because sometimes the parents feel very comfortable with where they are, and if they are comfortable with that and they do not push and they've never been outside of their communities, then what's the point of their child being outside of the communities? You know what I mean? So you have to, like, explore. And I think for me, going in the classroom, I always take my kids and I always want them to explore. I want to expose them, because exposure is a big thing. You come to school, like, it's not only about the ELA, the math, and there's more to education than the textbook. You know what I mean? And not everyone is book smart. You know what I mean? Some kids I know are tactile. They have to touch things and they get it like that. You know what I mean? Once you place something in front of them. And so you have to know, like, you have to expose children to different things. Once you expose, then curiosity starts. Oh, so this is that. Well, what happened here? Well, what happened there? Then you start asking questions. When you start asking questions, then you're like, you start wondering things. You want to know more, So I think exposure is very big in education as well.
Okay. So then are you saying that, like, sometimes the parents, so there seems to be a few things that, like, one, a lot of the parents are single parents that are like, a lot of responsibilities. They're working 2 to 3 jobs. And then the other aspect is that some of these parents themselves haven't been exposed to certain environments, so therefore they don't expose their children to certain things.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then you also have some students. I mean, students these days are very much exposed, like, when I say exposed, not like, culturally to certain things, but they are very exposed, like, to with social media. And a lot of them are very comfortable as well because they are rocking the latest shoes. Their mentality is very different. Like, where they focus on, like, is the material things, the hair, like, the edges and how I look and how it's laid and all of that.
So you see, I think that's the issue. The issue is that, yes, they're exposed, but they're not exposed to the right things.
And it's the same thing.
Yeah.
They have technology, and technology per se it's not all bad. It's how you utilize it, and that's one thing I teach them. You utilize it for a booking. You utilize it for every little game. You know how to do it quickly. Heck, they don't even read the manual. They get an iPad. They know. They already know what to do.
At 6 years old.
Hello. So it's like, they don't even need to. So it's like, this shows you, like, these kids. They're something smart. Like, they are smart, but now it's how do you utilize it, right? And so I teach them, like, utilize Siri. You have Siri, like, see how to write your paper. Stop coming to Miss Cadeau, because you have to look at it as well. Sometimes the kids are so far behind that you have to kind of give them now certain things for them to fill that gap. You know what I mean? You cannot fill the gap by 8th grade. You're teaching the kids phonics. The kid is looking at you like, but, like, what? Like, who's doing that going to high school? So now it's like, now what can you use to actually fill that gap? Like,
like, what's at your disposal?
Exactly. So let's start using our, like, computers. Let's start using our iPads for us to start writing, like, certain words. Horror, Miss Cadeau, how do you spell it? Check your iPad, because Miss Cadeau is not always going to be there, and in high school they're not going to hold your hand.
They're not.
You need to know how to spell story in high school. You know what I mean? It's different. So I think that's also one thing, like, when I'm teaching, is really, one, exposing children, but also, like, giving them the right resources. As well. That independency. As you become a student. As you're transitioning to high school.
Because you're teaching 8th grade now.
8th grade, yes.
It's so crazy that, like, to think that, like, in 8th grade that we have students who can't spell simple words. It's crazy, but it's sad all at the same time, right? Can we talk about that a bit?
Sure.
About is it just the fact that they are in special education, that they are having issues with spelling certain words, or that they're so behind their grade level? Or are you seeing that across the board in public schools nowadays, where students are just really left behind? Like, I know New York City had this thing of No Child Left Behind. Was that New York, or is it just like educational system?
Yes, so it's like, that was under Bush. Yes. But the No Child Left Behind Act.
I was like, no, all them kids are left behind.
And that was actually when we were in junior high school that came out. But yes, and you see it. You see the results
all
of
across
it.
The board.
All across the board, you see it.
Do you think that it's resources again that is the lack of factor, or is just like there's multiple things that are contributing to these children getting? I mean, how do you get to 8th grade and not know how to read? The ball is dropped on multiple different levels, right? On the areas of the parents, the teachers, and you can even blame the teachers because there's no resources, admin, like
the thing is, it has to be a collaborative effort on both ends. Teacher and at home. First of all, it starts at home. You have to introduce your children to books. And I always say that to my kids. The system hides. If you want to hide information from Black people, put it in a book. And it's like, we have to talk about it. You have to read. It's essential. It is essential. And so if a kid is going at home and is not reading, first of all, they tell you, like, according to statistics, research, it tells you, if a kid is 1 grade behind, that kid needs to read an hour a day, right? Whether it's in school or at home, right? An hour a day. That's 1 grade behind. Now, if that child you're talking about, like that child is testing and you're on pre-K level
Jeez.
and you are in 8th grade.
Jeez.
So it's like, you know.
How many hours? Yeah, because like that's 7 years almost.
That's exactly
7
it.
years.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so now this is a kid that I'm telling you that is very smart.
8 years.
Very, very smart.
Yeah.
If I'm saying anything to him, I can tell him, like, you know, read the book. What did I just read? He tells you everything.
Yeah.
Tells you information, tells you details,
Yeah,
and
but he
everything.
himself can't read
But
it.
he himself cannot read it, nor can he write it, and it takes forever for him to write it.
Yeah.
You know, but the thing is, it's like, you know, if a child, you cannot fail a child, and because they are special ed, you cannot fail a special ed child, because, like, you know, they have a need, they have a special need.
Yeah.
You know, it's like how you going to actually condemn a blind man crossing the street and then he gets hit by a car. You know what I mean? He has a disability.
Yeah.
You know, and so you cannot fail, unfortunately, like, you know, a special ed kid.
Yeah.
And sometimes, unfortunately, these kids, they know it as well, and it's like, you know, they use it against
To
them.
their advantage.
To use it to their advantage. You know, where it's like, on the IEP, it says, like, you know, you have to read the instructions and stuff like that. They just won't read it. So the effort is not even there.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, Miss Cadeau, read it. And for me, I'm like, listen, honey, like, that's what the IEP said. I wrote it, but I also know your potential.
Yes.
You won't read
Yes.
this, and then I come back to
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Like, you know,
That's
and I
true.
believe in challenging my kids
Yeah.
because the world is not soft, especially on our Black and brown children.
Yeah.
It is not soft.
Yeah.
And so I have to prepare you. And as a teacher, if I'm not preparing you, then I feel like I failed you. You know, and you're going into high school, they're not going to hold your hands. And that's why you see a lot of students dropping out. You know, and once you drop out, I mean, let's face it, then what?
Yeah.
Right?
And it becomes a whole struggle then as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
And it's like a whole looping system, right? So you never get out of it.
Yeah, because those students become parents who
There you
then
go.
have to parent a child who
There you
now
go.
they can't teach how to read.
There
It's
you
like
go.
a
It's like
never-ending cycle.
That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Do you find that, or do you observe that between boys and girls, do you find that one gender struggles more than the other? Or it's not really a gender thing?
It's both, I would say.
Okay.
Yes, it's both.
Okay.
I would say the only difference is with the young boy, you see more of a pride.
Okay.
You know, where it's like, yeah, don't talk to me like that in front of my boys and stuff like that. You know, where it's like it's an embarrassment if they're all placed in certain groups. With the girl, you don't see that as much. With the girl, you see more of an ambition in them.
Okay.
You know, and that's just been from my experience where I've seen, like, you know, the girls, it has more of an ambition to actually to do well, like, you know, whether it's in state exams or and things like that. But young boys, and I think, like, you know, with girls, when I do, like, especially when I'm doing the transitional part of the IEP, them going into high school and we're talking about, like, you know, career and stuff like that, they have more of a plan, I would say, like, you know, this is what I want to do, the reason why I want to do it. And then it's like, you know, they kind of watch videos where they're like, you know, it's with the hair, the makeup, they have an idea, like they're working on it. Whereas I feel like with the boys, it's like, you know, yeah, I want to be an engineer, but yeah. You know what I mean? It's more of like a lack of an ambition, I find, in the boys. And sometimes I have to push my boys even more. You know, because we know what happens. You know what's going to happen.